And the source told me that he was one of 5 people who received the equipment from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and that was originally what crashed in Roswell. And that it was a flying, circular-shaped aircraft. It was not from Mars, it was from Russia. And it was actually originally a Third Reich design. Much of what I write about in the book discusses how a program called Operation Paperclip was put into effect after the war, where America pillaged Third Reich scientists to head up our aerospace programs and much of our military programs. Werner von Braun is the best example. He designed the V-2 rocket for Hitler. He came over and designed the Apollo rockets for Kennedy. But Russia also did the same thing. They pillaged the scientists that they could get their hands on. And so this flying disc, according to the engineer from EG&G, was something that had crashed in New Mexico, and the intent was for it to be a hoax. That Stalin, and again, we're in 1947 here when we're talking about the Roswell crash. 1947, Stalin did not yet have an atomic weapon. Truman did. They were bitter rivals. And so Stalin made a move, fired a warning shot over Truman's bow, so to speak, to say, you may have the atomic bomb, but I have psychological warfare. And a la the War of the Worlds, he wanted to send this flying disc to land in New Mexico and have people come out that looked like aliens. And the EG&G engineer told me that the child-sized pilots inside were the result of ghastly human experiments in the Soviet Union. And that is what he told me. And I repeat it in my book because I wrote the uncensored history of Area 51, not the censored history. And many people take umbrage with that. Certainly a couple of the guys in my book aren't happy about it, and I understand why. As they've said to me, you know, we were John Wayne out there saving the free world, and no one likes to hear about this kind of, possibly this kind of ghastly goings-on in the desert. But this is what my source told me. I absolutely stand by his veracity, and I interviewed him for over 100 hours across, what I write in the book was 18 months. Now it's been more than 2 years. We would discuss nuclear weapons. We would discuss lots of things which I would then go fact check. And at the end of our several-hour interview, I would say, can I ask you another question about the subject that we're not allowed to talk about? And he would say yes. And that was one question I asked often. And now remember, keep in mind that this individual also participated in the program. So he was, according to him, a first-hand witness, reverse engineered this craft, received the people that were the child-sized aviators. So I asked him that question, and he finally gave me an answer, which I write in the book, and he said, because we were doing the same thing. The idea that the American scientists wanted to also push science, that they didn't want the Soviets ahead of us in any program, whatever it may be. And I do want to say a note on that, because another journalist said to me, you know, how dare you accuse the United States government of such horrible things? And my answer to it was, and I spent quite a bit of time writing about this in my book, while I don't claim to be able to speak for the technology in the flying craft, or certainly the kind of medical experiments that would create that kind of an alien-looking person. What I do speak to, and what I do write about, and what I do fact-check and source is what the Atomic Energy Commission did during its tenure, and the reckless human experimentation that they did. There's, you know, President Clinton put together a commission in the 1990s after a reporter named Ilene Wellson revealed that the Atomic Energy Commission had been injecting retarded children with plutonium at a state school in Massachusetts. And, you know, I see all the faces, everyone's like, oh, God, how horrible. And people really don't want to hear about that. And they turn the other way and they say, that's just horrible, and kind of go on. And, you know, I felt as a journalist that I believe what my source told me, and I believe that what he told me, the reason that he told me what he told me was because it was a matter of conscience, a matter of conscience. The other 4 engineers are dead, and so it's just him. He was very clear about that. And so if a debate or a discussion ensues as to whether or not this kind of a program could go on, how long it went on for, I feel that's an important discussion, and it's why I chose to write about it in my book. I will also say that, you know, I take the reader all the way up through the 80s. One of the last programs that I write about was the F-117 bomber, that sort of diamond-shaped stealth bomber that became famous in Gulf War I, that was developed out at Area 51 after the Air Force took over and sort of replaced a lot of the camera bays with weapons bays. But what has been going on since the War on Terror began is certainly out of my need to know, and none of that, I didn't have any sources tell me what was really going on there now, because that really is obviously of national security concern because we're fighting the War on Terror. But it is certainly a place where the drones are flown. And I also write another interesting story from right about 1998 when drones, everyone's familiar with them now because they're used in Pakistan, but they began as espionage platforms that only carried cameras. They were actually used in the Serbia and Bosnian conflict, and they were just kind of not interesting to many people other than the CIA. But right around the late 90s, this unknown terrorist named Osama bin Laden appeared on the scene, and the CIA they were considering assassinating him with a drone, and the way they would do it was they would attach missiles to the drone. And this was kind of a radical idea, so they got together the CIA and the Air Force, and they decided to engineer these hellfire missiles. The missiles are so accurate, the hellfire comes from fire and forget. You just push a button and it goes. But first they had to test it out there. And the president's concern at the time was, well, this Osama bin Laden character is known to do a lot of falcon hunting with members of the